Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 28th of April, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, and delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio, and we're being joined by Diane, Rasmussen, McAdie by live link from Scotland. Plus today we have a guest, so stay with us. Ben, we're going to get straight in on the importance of facts and truth and genuine media. And it seems to me, at least, that the government is doing everything it can to take utter and total control of free press and media.
Absolutely, Brian. Yes, we're in a war, a media war. We have been for some time. It's a war for meaning, a war for truth, a war for our minds, ultimately, and most importantly, a war for the minds of the nation's children. Let's hear from Chris Morris, CEO of Full Fact, speaking to the Lords Committee on Communications and Digital in Westminster last week.
Recently, a report came out from the Commission into Countering Online Conspiracy Theories in Schools, which was set up by the Pears Commission. I was part of that commission. Two of the recommendations from it I think are worth highlighting. One is that teaching on conspiracy theories should start in primary school. There's no point in waiting until the age of 13 when 77% of 11 and 12-year-olds have already got social media accounts. And it's not too soon to start at the age of 5. And Hannah's already mentioned Finland, and we're probably not the first people to come before this committee and suggest that Finland might be quite a good example to follow because they seem to get a lot of things right. And they teach children from a very early age how to recognise potentially harmful information. The second thing is, though, is that it's really important to empower teachers because one of the findings of the Commission was that many teachers did not feel they had permission to discuss sometimes sensitive issues of conspiracy theories. If a pupil came into school, for example, and said, well, my dad or my mum said this, does the teacher have permission from the school, from the local authority, from the Department for Education, do they have the permission to take on what that parent has said? It's a very difficult position for the teacher to be put in, but I think it's really important that if we're going to set up a successful system, for teachers to feel that they are empowered to make those decisions. Separately, I think it's also really important to say that all of these things need to happen outside school as well, and they need to happen at all ages. The government is, I think, this government and the previous government rightly focusing primarily on young people, on children of school age. But, for example, when we carried out focus groups last summer on misinformation and what it means to people, the overwhelming answer that almost everyone gave was, Uncle Stan or Auntie Betty got scammed by somebody online. That's what misinformation means to people. And when they then went on to say, well, how do you think we can counter that? Is they need to be taught how to understand, to operate in a world which is moving so fast and where they feel left behind. So while schools and young people are incredibly important, we shouldn't forget the rest of society as well.
Ben, truly astonishing clip. I'm really glad that you brought this in to the start of the news today, because what are we dealing with? Well, we thought they were soap manufacturers, but now apparently they are to help reframe the children. So what is he talking about? Indoctrination, reframing the teachers, breaking the bond between parents and the children so the state can get its opinion in. This is one of the most dangerous speeches that I've actually heard for some time, Ben.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Mums and dads, uncles and aunties are the problem, and empowered teachers is the solution, and they're going to be able to make decisions about the re-education of your kids, essentially, and course-correcting them when they make misstatements or have misconceptions about the way that the world is. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing, to be honest with you, and also right the way down to 5-year-olds. You're talking about re-educating or indoctrinating early years school children. Right? They have absolutely no right to be doing this. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. Even if he's referencing it happening in other countries, he talks about Finland. Doesn't matter if they're doing it in Finland. They shouldn't be doing it in Finland if that's what they are indeed doing in Finland. And who is he? So that's Chris Morris. So we talked about Full Fact a lot over the years. I looked at the UK Column website earlier, and the first interaction that UK Column had with Full Fact was in 2012, which is basically when they were set up. So we were straight out the gate. Brian sent a very strongly worded letter to them because they had, frankly, misinformed the public about a story that we'd put out, right, even back then. And essentially these organisations have been established in order to deal with problems like the UK column, and we are a problem to the establishment narrative, the establishment agenda. Diane did some excellent reporting on them last year. I recommend going to have a look at that. But essentially what we're dealing with here is the vested interests and the financial backing of the BBC, the World Economic Forum, the UN, Sustainable Development Goals, Google, Meta, big tech companies, a bunch of supposedly charitable foundations like the Esme Fairbairn Foundation and others who are seeking to control the minds of the nation's children. Right. And they are not just informing policy. Yeah. So that's Chris Morris talking to the House of Lords in Westminster last week, obviously by information. They've asked him to come in and share his opinion. And he was very proudly the first fact checker at the BBC. And he was doing that roll through COVID. So a precursor to Mariana Spring and BBC Verify. He was the man who set that whole programme up. But he actually references this report, which comes from the Pears Foundation. That's the Pears family, the soap manufacturer of Pears Soap, very famously, and very wealthy family who now have a foundation dealing with these issues. They issued this report last year about countering online conspiracies in schools. We really don't want kids going on the internet and finding out information that is inconvenient to us. But they're not just advising on policy. We can actually see here this report was commissioned by these two individuals, Sir Trevor Pears, who's the scion of the Pears family, but also Sir Mufti Hamid Patel at the bottom, who subsequent to this report being issued has actually been installed as the interim chair of Ofsted. So he's actually now running the education system. And we're now going to hear a little bit about what is actually going on in the education system at the moment, what's happening with British children.
Ben, thank you very much. Well, Diane, let's bring you into the news and let's have a look at what sort of society the government has helped create. Is it taking us into a better place? I would say no, but what have you got for us?
Well, thanks, Brian, and hello, Ben, and it's good to be here today. I wanted to first of all cover today of course, we know about the Supreme Court ruling recently about saying that a woman is actually a biological woman. There have been protests taking place all around the country since the ruling took place, especially over the last couple of weekends. For example, here's an article from a local paper from up here in the north from Yorkshire. There was a protest in New York over the weekend that happened on Saturday. This particular piece of propaganda called it peaceful. I heard from someone who was directly there on the ground in York on Saturday, found it very frightening. It was very large and the people were very angry. So what I'd like to do is I found some photos of some of the signs and the things that people hold at these protests. They show these large crowds, but here's one from Edinburgh that was in this place it's a website called The Canary. That was from the 19th, saying it was to rail against a ruling that was disgraceful and far-right fueled. So that's the bias presented by The Canary. But what's actually going on when you get into the crowds and into what's actually going on? Let's take a look, for example, at this video. This is a video from Edge of the Matrix, who was with us in Cheltenham and interviewed me about the LGBTQ books that are going on in libraries around the world. And this was him having a very heated debate with someone at the Manchester protest recently.
That you're biologically male. You prove it now.
What, do you want me to get my pants down?
Yeah,
right.
I'd prove it. Even if you had a penis, it would prove that you were biologically male.
Come in.
How do you know that you have is it XY chromosomes?
XX chromosomes?
It's offensive.
Okay, well you can...
Because you are absolutely wrong.
Okay.
And you do not know what you're talking about.
Okay.
You do not live the life of a transgender male or female.
No, I don't.
You do not. So it's got nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing to do with you. What this person wants to do, that person wants to do, it's got nothing to do with you. You say you want to live in a socially acceptable or free society.
Yeah.
This is a socially acceptable free society where you, whatever your beliefs, keep them to yourself. They don't impinge on what everybody else has to say about it or what to believe. that sign is so offensive to, in my opinion, most people in this country.
And of course, the punchline, which we didn't get to see in the video, but you can watch the full video on YouTube. What happened was that he found out at the end was that the man who was standing to the side of the man he was speaking with, so the younger man, was saying that was a trans man. I think that was right, but was actually, saying a trans woman, but actually a real man. Anyways, lied all the way through the debate when it turned out he was just actually a man. So that was interesting. So some of the photos that I mentioned that I wanted to show everyone here. Here's one that said the only good TERF, which is trans exclusionary radical feminist, is a hung one with a drawing of a noose. So that's lovely. We have another one here. It says rot in hell Rowling. So J.K. Rowling, of course, the author of the Harry Potter books, who is very outspoken in her TERFness. And another saying transphobes should have a DIY lobotomy. Here's another one saying, fix your hearts or die. And another sign next to them that's saying, unions defend trans rights. Dump leaders who elected Starmer and Streeting. They must not know that Starmer said in 2023, of course, that 99.9% of women haven't got a penis, or that David Lammy said that trans women can grow a cervix. Here's one saying, you can pee next to me. This one was posted by Steph Richards. Steph Richards has a bit of a history. Steph is a biological man who has fathered children. This was at Southampton. Steph used to be the CEO of a charity called Endometriosis South Coast, which, of course, endometriosis is a women's health condition only, that only applies to women. And Steph had stepped down within about 6 months of being appointed CEO because Steph was seen as, according to some people, some transphobic people didn't like the fact that a biological man was in charge of a women's health charity. So imagine that. And also, more on peeing, I would say trans demos, these activist demos, one of the things that happens is they are actually urinating in the streets in order to make a point about not being able to go to pee in women's toilets. And a couple of other news items as well related to this agenda. Again, more about peeing, unfortunately. Earliston Primary School in the Scottish Borders has been ordered by a judge to add single-sex toilets to its new primary school building. Some of the parents were concerned that the newly built schools only had gender-neutral loos put in them, so they took them to court. And I just want to say this is one example of what we can all be doing to take action against what they're trying to do to the children in our country. Back over in the U.S., there's a group of Muslim, Catholic, and Ukrainian Orthodox parents in Montgomery County, Maryland. They've taken their school board to the U.S. Supreme Court for the right to opt out their primary school-age children from school curriculum containing books about transgender and homosexual agendas. The summary of the case, according to a CBS News article, and you can read the full filing as well, is that public schools are unconstitutionally burdening parents' First Amendment rights to exercise their religion freely when they require children to participate in instruction on gender and sexuality that violates the family's religious beliefs. There will be a decision made this summer, but it looks like so far the justices are siding with the parents. So that's some good news. One of the books that's under question in the case that has been brought to the Supreme Court is the book called Born Ready, The True Story of a Boy Named Penelope by Jodi Patterson. And here I would like to bring in our guest today. She's Cathy Mudge. She is the head of Protect and Teach down in Devon. And Cathy, I've interviewed previously on UK Column exposing what's going on in the schools and the curriculum of the books. And I'd like to have Cathy read an excerpt from this book. So welcome to the show, Cathy.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Right, are you sitting comfortably? Pleppy, why are you so angry, Mama asks. Because everyone thinks I'm a girl. However you feel is fine, baby. It's what's on the inside that matters most. If you feel like a boy, that's okay. No, Mama, I don't feel like a boy. I am a boy. Oh, Mama gets quiet. I love you, Mama, but I don't want to be you. I want to be Papa. I don't want tomorrow to come. Because tomorrow I'll look like you. Please help me, Mama. I want to be a boy. I hold Mama's hand and transfer some of my ninja powers to help her understand. Then Mama says the best word I've ever heard. Yes, she says, we will make a plan to tell everyone we love what we know. What's that? You are a boy. For the first time, my insides don't feel like fire. They feel like warm, golden love. So,
Thanks,
there you
Cathy.
go.
Thank you. What did you think of that when you first read that?
Well, we're looking at lots of books and we haven't covered them all because there's so many. We're working our way through. So this is the first time I've seen this one. And the moment I read it, I thought this is aimed at the mother more than the child itself. It's actually grooming the mother. The sentence that got me was where it said, I don't want tomorrow to come. Now that, if you ask anybody, what do you mean you don't want tomorrow to come? You're thinking of suicide, aren't you? A suicidal ideation. So the whole of this premise is based on the fact if you don't help your child change sex, they will kill themselves. This is what they've been saying all the time when there is no proof of that. Child suicide is extremely rare, and it actually shows the suicide rates are higher amongst children that have transed after they've gone through the process than before. But it means a mother will read that to their child and they'll think, oh my gosh, my child's, my little tomboy girl is going to kill herself unless I trans them and make them a boy. It's just, and it's the rejection. They've got a daughter, and instead of having a daughter who wants to dress like a boy and do boy things, they're just saying, no, you're not a boy, you're not a girl anymore. That's rejected. We're going to have a boy. Yes, we're happy. We're going to have a boy now. They're just rejecting the child's sex. It's just shocking, isn't it? It's one
It
of
certainly
many.
is. It certainly is. Yeah, it is one of many. And that's, one of the things that I would encourage viewers who have not watched our interview previously, where we called out a lot of the content that was in certain books, and that it just scratches the surface of the amount of these books that are pretty much, from what I see, I occasionally go into Waterstones or W.H. Smith locally and look around in the children's section and the young adult section, and it all has some element of rainbows of it's okay if you don't even want to be a person. You can be a deer or a wolf if you want to. You can be whatever you want to be. And it starts, as we see, very young with these picture books, and it just gets more and more advanced and complex and in depth as we go further into the age of the child. So by the time that you're in the young adult section, you're seeing queer romances, sexual relationships, things that, and you didn't even see that. I would say when I was a child, even, a romance that for a teenager didn't have any sort of really explicit sexual content. It might have had, oh, I like this boy. Should I ask him out? Are we going to have a date? But it wasn't anything this explicit until you got into adult fiction. And I think something that's really important for us to highlight, as you will know as well, is that the age range doesn't actually indicate appropriateness of content, if that's correct, right? It's only about the reading level. Is that how you understand it as well?
Yeah, that's a big issue. They're looking at the words, and a lot of these authors have dumbed down their wording so that they'll make it acceptable for a 9-year-old. We had an 11-year-old girl who came home from school with a book about anal sex in graphic detail that was beyond my comprehension, and I'm an ex-nurse, and the wording and everything, but it was all done in very childish language, like poop was mentioned a lot. So they basically, that book has a rating for a 9-year-olds plus because of the vocabulary in it. It's rated by the publisher. People that are writing these books get them printed. If you wrote a child's book now without including LGBTQ stuff, so like having a gay child or a trans child or a child questioning their gender, you just wouldn't get it published. We know that from authors that have contacted us having trouble getting things printed. The publishers themselves get kudos for sending the school LGBTQ material. We often find it's packaged up, so they'll be sending a school like history books, geography books, and they'll include a whole load of LGBTQ books as well. It's a massive number that you're dealing with. In a school, you'll maybe have 13 different titles on a topic that I think probably could be covered by 1 or 2 books. They'll do shelves of these books on particular days like Pride Month and Transgender Day of Remembrance. They'll have a display out, rainbows everywhere, which attracts the children in. The books are attractive as well. Today, for example, I've had a few things in my inbox. One was a new book that's just out for toddlers, and it's all of the letters of the alphabet. An A is for activist, and it's a picture of a baby with its fist in a clenched fist position. That's a book for today. And T, of course, is for trans and trains. So that's a new book that we've had as well. And you're talking, a lot of this stuff also comes from groups. So we found LGBTQ groups in schools pushing this agenda, which brings us back some of the two groups you named earlier, which was the Esme Fairbank Foundation has been funding a lot of this in schools, and the Pears Foundation. They're on our list of groups that pay for this to happen.
Thanks, Cathy. We'll come back to you a bit later in the news. And I'm just watching Brian, his face is just falling as he's listening to what we've just covered.
Thank you both very much for that. Well, my face was also following comments in the UK column chat box, which is running live as this news is going out, and people were shocked, absolutely shocked at the report, and they're deeply concerned about these driven changes in society, which are clearly heavily focused on young people, children, because obviously if children can be changed, then the state gains total control of the future. We must stay on this subject in future news programmes, but yes, extremely concerning to the average person. Now, I'm going to move on still to the subject of children, but this is issues around a live court case, so we have to be very measured in what we report today. But something came up at the end of last week that I thought was very significant and really deserved to be flagged up to the UK column audience. So let's have a look at this report from the Evening Standard. Constance Marten tells Old Bailey trial she went on the run after, quote, "my children were stolen by the state." And I'll just add a little bit more of the text here. So the couple were convicted at the first trial of concealing the birth of a child and perverting the course of justice. They're now on trial where they deny charges of manslaughter and causing or allowing the death of a child. Now, this was a newborn baby. The whole case is very tragic, but there were some things that took place in the court that we need to have a look at. Let's have a look at the video that went with the Evening Standard report, and I'm going to say to the audience, do go and look at that article because it was extremely well written and very informative. But here's what one of their editorial team had to say.
This is the case of Constance Marten and Mark Gordon, the aristocrat and her lover who went on the run from police and are now accused of killing their baby. Now, my name is Tristan Kirk. I'm the courts correspondent for the London Standard. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon went missing in December 2022 with their newborn baby Victoria in tow, sparking a massive manhunt as they attempted to evade the authorities and police. Baby Victoria was tragically found dead around 2 months later. Her body discarded in a little bag for life, left in a shed covered in rubbish. Gordon and Marten are now on trial, accused of manslaughter and of causing or allowing the death of their baby girl. They deny the charges, saying that they cared for her, gave her warmth, comfort, food and love, and that they are not responsible for her death. That's something that an Old Bailey jury has now been charged with deciding. Are they guilty or not guilty? Marten and Gordon, who've been a couple for a number of years, checked into a holiday cottage in Northumberland on December the 20th, 2022. At that stage, they were on nobody's radar. A couple who were largely estranged from their own family and had apparently checked in for a Christmas break. But when they left, the property was in a mess, and there were signs that it was possible a baby had been born. During the course of the police investigation, detectives have pieced together sightings of Marten and Gordon on their travels over the course of late December and early January, as they're trying to explain what they did and why.
Obviously, that video is out in the public domain, so we can show it to our audience quite happily. Note the hypnotic music, however, and I don't know why they felt that was necessary on such a serious report. But let's just go a little bit into what happened in court, and I'm using their own statements from the article. Let's have a look. So this is Constance Marten, and she said, my family, she was talking about the family, my family never accepted my relationship with Gordon, a male partner. They were the ones who instigated my children being taken away. She went on to say that she loved her children extremely, and not being with them is very, very hard. And she followed on to say, I think it's an absolute outrage. They are never caused harm. They've always been loved and well catered for. So the decision was an outrage. What is she talking about? She's talking about previous children, 4 of them being taken away from her by the state. But this is where the report of the Standard is extremely interesting, because Constance Marten went on to say this: when my children were stolen by the state. And as she did this, the judge responded. So this is Judge Lucraft, KC, who's actually Recorder of London. And he said to Constance, words to give the indication, I need to caution you against answering in the way that you have just done, as there are, quote, consequences that may follow if you do. So Constance talks about her children being stolen by the state, and this is followed up by a caution from the judge with these particular words. Now, it is sensitive because the case is running, so we can't say too much about it. But Constance went on to say of a partner, I love him very much. I wouldn't have 5 children with him, live with him, be with him if I didn't. He is very dear to me. And she also went on to say that they went off grid after Victoria, the latest baby, was born, to, quote, stop her being taken into care in the same way that the other 4 children were taken away. Now, what's very interesting is that if you look at BBC report on this, the BBC gives Constance words but fails to mention that extraordinary caution by the judge in response to talking about child stealing by the state. And I'm going to end this section with 4 key questions that I think arise from the court exchange. And that is that in mentioning child stealing by the state, what was Constance Marten really trying to say? Well, we're not going to know because she wasn't able to say it. What did the judge really mean by his caution and, quote, consequences? And 3, would the man on the Clapham omnibus deduce that Constance was deflected from giving her defence testimony in her own words? And lastly, are the accused in general now to be restricted from giving testimony on the subject of child stealing by the state? And I'll point out to our audience and wider audience that the UK column has repeatedly warned about child stealing taking place by the UK state, and it's something that's ongoing. So difficult to say more at the moment until the trial is over, but that exchange and the judge's words were reported in the mainstream press. And I think there are some serious questions to be asked about what was actually taking place there. I don't fully understand it, and certainly UK column will see if we can get more information out of the Recorder of London's organisation about that court hearing in due course. Well, let's move on to UK column adverts. And first of all, as always, we'd like to say if our audience likes what the UK column is doing, then please support us, make a donation or join in via a monthly or annual or lifetime membership. This gives us the financial base to allow us to do what we're doing. You can always purchase something from the UK column shop. And we always like to point out that we do have Kaleido healthcare products. If you'd like to buy those, we get a small percentage from the sales. Most importantly, we're doing what we're doing in order to share information and to circulate information and facts, not only in UK, but worldwide. So please help us out with that, because it's clear that we're shadow banned on many channels. Now, we've got a number of very good events coming up. Tonight at 7 o'clock, the World Council for Health is putting out this pandemic treaty without public consent panel. So if you go to their website, worldcouncilforhealth.org, you can see the details as to how you get into that. But I'm sure it's going to be exceptionally informative. And of course, people continuing to press to get information and facts out about what took place around COVID. Now, tomorrow at 1 p.m., we've got an interview with Sam Sorbo. This is with Sam and Charles Mallet about the critical distinction between schooling and educating and the choice-facing parents confronted by the ills of the system. Do go and do have a look at that tomorrow. I'm also going to give you the heads up that we've got an audio interview coming out, because we're getting very interesting information from Christians in Cornwall who are talking about the destruction of the Church of England. And I have to say, we've now reached the position where Christians are so frightened about their own church that this will be an anonymous interview with the identity of the person completely changed because of what they say is increasing venom and unpleasantness inside the Church of England to anybody who dares speak out against the change policies. Now, Saturday, the 3rd of May, we've also got a very interesting presentation by William Cathy, which is Natural Law, Remedy or Ruin, It's Our Choice. That's Saturday, the 3rd of May, Stowford Community Centre, Sidmouth, so you can have a look at that. We've also got May Bank Holiday, 23rd to the 26th, that's Stand in the Light, which is up in Cumbria, a really great event. We have also got the Thetford Truth and Freedom Beer Festival. That's a mixture of socialising and talks, Friday the 18th to Saturday the 19th of July 2025. The Angel Inn, Swallow Lane, Larling, NR16 2QU. And we've also got some articles here, and I think, Diane, we'll bring you in to just take us through the articles that UK Column is putting up on the website. We encourage many, many more people to get in and read these articles. I think a lot of people watch video, but they don't realise the amount of really excellent written material that UK Column is putting out. Diane.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's really important to be looking at all of this excellent written content that we're getting in. And I guess I'm biased as the commissioning editor for written content, but I have to say that a lot of these articles that I'm going to show you here are from members that have just been doing their own research and doing wonderful things. So if any members out there would be interested in writing an article, we do operate on a fee scale. So please get in touch with me if you would like to write something for us. So these are just the articles that have been published in the last couple of weeks since Easter. This first one is Welfare Cuts for Warfare, How the UK Government is Punishing Its Most Vulnerable to Funnel Billions to Ukraine by Radika. The next one we have is US Government Fights Transgender Movement. This is by Cornelius H. van den Hoven. This was originally published in Dutch, and Alex Thompson worked with me to get this translated into English. The next one is Lawfare in a Higher Gear by Andrea Passo. I hope I'm saying her surname correctly. I actually met her in Cheltenham, and a discussion at our event led to her getting published with us. So that was excellent. The next one is someone we all know and love, Mark Anderson, Beyond Vax Dangers, Other Big Pharma Products Mired in Lawsuits for Fraud, Cancer, and Other Major Health Impacts. It's a lot of very important information, medically speaking, in this article. The next one we have is The Crisis of Culture by my friend, Dr. Stuart Wayton, who's the chair of the Scottish Union for Education. George Orwell's 1984 is definitely in place for this particular article, so be warned in advance. The next one is the International Commission of Jurists and the Rape of the Children. This is by Mark Tarrant, who is a lawyer in Australia and got in touch with Brian. It's a short article, but some very important information in that one as well. We also have this Secret Society dedicated to New World Order, the Fabians, by Professor Gloria Moss. Now, this is a very, very important article, and this was just published yesterday, and I've already getting these excellent comments on Twitter and in our member forums as well. So at World's End replied to this and said, "Surely the greatest article I've read all year. I expect more to come on this from the fabulous, much shared, much loved UK column. You are real bulldogs among us. I am so personally grateful you exist. Thank you." And to Diane, Rubin, 21 Wire, that's Patrick Henningsen, Alex, and others. And also Dr. Wasim, I'm not sure who that is, but said that he was beyond stunned by your expose of the Fabians at the heart of the Labour Party and current government. I would recommend everyone to read this article before the elections that are coming up soon, because once you read this, you will definitely not want to be voting Labour. And the last one I want to highlight is the first part of a three-part series by Dr. Joost Landgrebe. We will have a three-part series on the banking system. This one is about how central banks work and when they fail. This is the first paywalled article that we have on the website, because this one you have to be logged in as a member to be able to access it. And so I encourage members to take a look at that one. It's got a lot of very detailed but important information. And I'd like to go back to Cathy now. Cathy is hosting a conference this weekend, and it's the Protect and Teach conference. And I'll let Cathy say whatever she wants to tell us about it.
Right, thank you, Diane. Yes, we're holding our third conference now. It's a small working group. We basically get together and we work on the issues and find solutions and feedback them. So we've got you, Diane. You're coming to talk about library books and the situation with schools and public libraries and how these books on gender ideology are getting in there. We've got Professor Gloria Moss, who's going to come and talk about biological sex and the transhumanist agenda. So that will be very interesting. Emma Thompson is coming. She's the daughter. Her father transed about probably 20, 30 years ago, and living as a child and being brought up by a man who says that they're now their mother. We're talking about judicial review. We're also talking about working on the streets, how we go out and talk to people about this issue, how we're working in schools. We're talking about binary biology as well. We've got a speaker on that, trying to look at the school curriculum and what teachers are actually teaching now. So it's Bristol based. Our website and our email will be listed, so you can get in touch with us directly if you'd like to come. It's free, donation on the door. Thank you.
And how many spaces? Thanks. And how many spaces are left for the conference? Can people still sign up?
Yeah, we've got spaces, so absolutely you can sign up. The nearest train station is Bristol Parkway, and we're just off the motorway junction near Bristol, so we're not actually in Bristol city centre. So if you'd like to pop down on that day, from 10 till 4.
And if I can tempt people further to come to the conference, I have some of these new I Love CO2 badges with ukcolumn.org on them. They are currently not available in the shop. They will be shortly. But if you would like one of these badges, please come meet me at the conference, and I might just give you a free badge saying I love CO2.
Excellent. Diane and Cathy, thank you very much for that really interesting segment. And Cathy, really great to see all of the activism that is clearly increasing across the country. And I think this is one of the key reasons why we're now seeing, I think it's panic starting at the higher levels of control. But we still need to understand who these people are, what their policies are. And Ben, I think you can take us into more of how this cabal is doing their pretty evil business.
Absolutely, yes. Well, their policy is total control of everything. That's really what they're aiming for. And that is slavery, ultimately. And if you don't feel like a slave right now than you will do soon enough. We've shown this chart a few times before, shows the concentration of wealth into the hands of the 1%. It's doubled from 1962 to 2014 based on these statistics, and that trajectory, it's probably up at about 85% now. And we know that by 2030, they want to get it to 100% of ownership by the 1%. We will own nothing and be happy. That is essentially a slave system, and it's enabled by an overseer class. I'm going to talk about the overseers today. One who oversees or superintends workmen, especially slaves. One who has charge under the owner or manager of the work on a plantation. So for today's purposes, Europe is the plantation. We are the slaves. The owners are the global investment funds and the billionaire class. And this man is an overseer. This is Tunde Olanrewaju, who is a British man of Nigerian extraction. He's a trustee at Oxfam, one of these improbable career trajectories that we talk about, Brian. He's a member of the Imperial College Council, so slap-bang in Bill Gates territory. He's on the board of Innovate UK, which is one of the primary mechanisms for driving the transformation agenda out of central government in the public-private marketplace to completely change our society. He's also a member of the UK Government Industrial Strategy Advisory Council, very influential, powerful guy. And most importantly, he's a senior partner at McKinsey and Company, the global strategy and consulting firm that is a strategic partner of the World Economic Forum. He's been there for 23 years, man and boy. He was at one point the global chief technology officer, so a very important role in the firm in an increasingly technology-enabled system that we're in. Interestingly, he was managing partner of UK and Ireland and Israel. So interestingly, as part of the government's 2030 integration agenda, there's a kind of a counterpart happening out in the marketplace with organisations like McKinsey in particular, basically merging their Israel and UK operations, which I think is quite an astonishing thing. And he was in that position from 2022 to 25. And he's just been bumped up into the top job in Europe, interestingly. So he's done a great job there, apparently, earning lots of money for the firm. And he's now the managing partner for Europe for McKinsey. And he put out this little statement. There's just an excerpt here. I'll put a link to it. You can go and read the whole thing. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I step into this role at a dynamic time for Europe and our clients. Powerful forces are redefining industries and shifting the foundations of national competitiveness. There is an increasingly urgent need to boost productivity, strengthen Europe's competitiveness, build new European champions, and ensure the region continues to lead on the global stage. That's his big message. And actually, very helpfully outlined 5 key recommendations, what he calls imperatives for corporate leaders. And I think the language here deserves some scrutiny. An imperative is a command, right? So he's essentially dictating to corporate leaders, and that means the people running multinational corporations. So this is FTSE 350, global brands. McKinsey work at board level with about 90% of listed firms, right? So this message is going right to the top, to the boardrooms in the corporations who are essentially enabling this huge economic transition that we're going through. And that guy, Mr. Tunde, is setting the pace. He's calling the shots. He's telling them what to do. So what are the things that he's recommending? So the first one is this: shaping a concentrated base of long-term and aligned investors. That means reducing ownership down to as small a number of institutional firms as possible who all ultimately think and want the same thing. So this is about establishing relationships with the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and the State Streets and the institutional funds that are driving the agenda, because that makes it easier for you to implement it. You don't have any pesky retail shareholders raising inconvenient questions at the AGM. You just get to wave stuff through. What else is he saying? We need to align ambition with management and board incentives. So that's basically using pay and stock to incentivize your leaders to do what you want them to do. So that's management and board, not the workers, importantly. So this is about getting the rest of the overseer class in the plantation aligned with what the owner class and the other management people want them to do. exploring tech-led business models, new geographies, new products. So this is about automation, ultimately reducing headcount, the number of people that you employ. It's also about embedding globalization. So if you're moving into new geographies, this is about international cross-border trade. They love that because it necessitates a whole bunch of other things, international supply chains, cross-border payments, all that kind of stuff. And also it's about increasing the number of people that you compete with. So if you're delivering new products and services, it means that you're competing with other firms. That means that there's less opportunity for new entrants to come to the marketplace. Essentially, this is the consolidation of the corporate profit platform. That's what's going on here. Partnering with innovators to make bold investments in technology. So this is about working in partnership with big tech, NVIDIA, Microsoft, you know the names, and all of that will be facilitated by McKinsey, who will earn a lot of money from cutting those deals. And then finally, purposefully reskilling the workforce. All right, so this is about driving the people, the slave class, essentially, the workers who don't own a thing, to become ever more tightly embedded with and subservient to technology, in particular AI, right? And the AI is basically, if we're going to continue with our overseer analogy, that is the whip in the hand of the overseer. That's the AI, right? That's essentially what that's doing. Yeah. Pretty crazy, actually, you know, to see the how much they sort of distill it down to just 5 key points, but there's so much in there. And one of the things that I immediately did when I saw this was go, is there a way that shareholders can push back on this stuff? And actually, really interestingly, if you go and look at the way that shareholdings in listed companies in the UK have transformed since the 60s, again, those statistics I showed earlier on were from the early 60s, where the concentration of wealth into the hands of the 1%. You can actually track that really neatly and show that the amount of shares owned by individuals in these big listed companies has gone down from over 50% to just over 10% over a period of about 60 years, right? And that essentially means that all of the power in the markets has been taken away from individuals and small shareholders, and actually is now in the hands of institutional investors, but importantly, non-UK and non-European based institutional investors. So actually, the economic system is completely out of our hands, and there's no recourse within the existing system. So essentially what we need to do, and I talk about this a lot, is so far as possible, and this is not always that easy to achieve, we need to take our business, vote with our wallets, get away from listed companies completely. Get away from the FTSE. Go and have a look at who's listed in the FTSE. You know the names. They're on the high street. They're on your TV screen. Stop buying from them. Because what they're doing is implementing this totalitarian agenda that your man Tunde there is dictating terms around. Right.
And this Ben, is absolutely stripping the wealth out of the UK as a nation state, and what a simple graph that is.
Yeah, stripping wealth, stripping intellectual property, all agency and sovereignty. In the market. And a similar thing is happening in the political system as well, right? And as I say, it's not just the market; it's also government. And actually, if I just go back to the full post that we can see here, this is what he shared. You can see that he gets a little shout out from that guy. Outstanding! You will rock as usual. Go Tunde. That's from Paul Wilmot. Who's he? Well, he's another senior McKinsey guy. So he was managing partner for McKinsey Digital, 96 to 2019. So actually, at some point, he probably would have been Tunde's, maybe his boss, certainly a close colleague. He was also Chief Digital and Information Officer at Lego, interestingly. Lego, there's some fascinating stuff, actually. When you really dig into what Lego's done and is doing in terms of kids' development, like there's a whole show we could do there. But also, of course, he's slap bang in the middle of UK government. So he was the chair of the UK Government Digital and Data Office. So you've got Tunde in the market, this guy in government, their colleagues, they've worked together for years. And as I spoke about a couple of months ago, I think it was, UK Government Digital and Data Office has been completely transformed by former McKinsey people and is now completely owned and operated by Amazon, essentially, right? So these people have just gone in and taken all of our national assets. And he's still in there. That role ended back in January, but he's still a non-exec at DCIT. Overseeing the transformation agenda, right? And this is what's happening in the countries, what's happening in the market. And I don't want to over egg this too much, but I do think that it's worth dwelling on the point that we now have a Nigerian guy essentially dictating economic policy across the whole of Europe. And I do wonder, like, how appropriate that is. You know, should we be celebrating this? Should we be pursuing this as a course of action? And to his credit, I think I haven't actually seen Mr. Tunde talking too much about these kind of divisive racial issues, but actually his predecessor at McKinsey has done a lot, and that's this lady, Dame Vivian Hunt, DBE. So she was a senior partner at McKinsey and Company. She was the life sciences lead for 6 years, so helping the global pharmaceutical companies make a lot more money. She was then managing partner of UK and Ireland, and having left there, went to become the chief innovation officer at the United Health Group. So this is one of the biggest healthcare companies on earth. I think it's the fourth richest company in the US. Like, extraordinarily powerful and wealthy. She's also on the Trilateral Commission. She loves playing these racial games. So Powerless Foundation, most influential black woman in Britain. And she was also a founding trustee of the Black Equity Organisation, which I've spoken about a lot previously, which is essentially been set up to deal with issues of what they call systemic racism. But actually, we can see, just for the existence of Dame Vivian Hunt DBE, her own position in society, and also Tunde, who I was speaking about earlier, his position within McKinsey, the extraordinary privilege and wealth and power that these people have, that actually there aren't really any issues of systemic racism in our society at all. And actually, these people are just feathering their own nest. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. Apparently, they're coming to make things fairer, but actually, they are quite literally overseers in a slave system, right? And actually, Dame Vivian Hunt was made an overseer of Harvard University last year. That's what Harvard calls the people who run its university, which I think is an extraordinarily striking way of describing what they're about and what they do.
And certainly we should be watching them every moment of every day. A few people in the chat box are saying yes, but the sort of language is rubbish. Well, it may be rubbish, but we need to understand what they are saying, because if we know their language, we can understand what they're planning, and therefore we can disrupt and stop it. So language is very important, but certainly don't just dismiss what they're saying as nonsense, because they are changing our world using their language. Diane, let's bring you back. And a key subject which many, many people have got huge concerns about, and that's geoengineering. But of course, some of it we can see, some of it is visible, and some of it is almost hidden in plain sight. And to really start to take some of this apart, we need to be very sure what's factual and what's not. But what have you got for us?
Yes, thanks, Brian. And just to reiterate one more time, I do love carbon dioxide. It's been all over the mainstream news in the last few days and on social media as a result that we should just be looking up. They're doing this, they're doing this. So here's one example from The Guardian, saying UK scientists to launch outdoor geoengineering experiments. Blocking the sunlight could temporarily slow the climate crisis, but the technologies remain highly controversial. So similar stories all over the place the last few days. This is referring to a £56 million set of projects funded by ARIA, the Advanced Research and Invention Agency. I won't go into ARIA in detail because we've been covering ARIA on UK columns since 2021. And it's a UK, it's under the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. It's very secretive. You are not allowed to send freedom of information requests to ARIA because they will not respond to them. Last week, I sent out a post on X that mentioned the report that I did on geoengineering 2 weeks ago. And even though my post got almost no views 2 weeks ago when I did it, it now has over 11,000 views, just to show you how popular this topic is becoming. So this project through ARIA is sort of the brainchild of Professor Mark Symes from the University of Glasgow. And his quote about the project, which is on the ARIA website, is that decarbonization is vital, but our current progress puts us at risk of triggering a large number of temperature-induced climate tipping points. The program will explore critical unanswered questions as to how or whether we might cool the Earth safely and responsibly on the timescales required to avoid climate catastrophe. So the background to Professor Symes is that he was in the first cohort of program directors, as they're called at ARIA, which started in October of 2023, and he's now finished his time in that role. There's now 8 new program directors. What the program directors do is they create what are called opportunity spaces, which they say are important but underexplored areas of research that we believe are ripe for breakthroughs. They each serve as a bedrock for multi-year programs directed by our program directors. And so this was his idea as the program director. His opportunity space was called Future-Proofing Our Climate and Weather. And Charles Mallett first mentioned that back on UK Column News on the 22nd of May, 2024. The website has a page explaining the program under the opportunity space, which is called Exploring Climate Cooling. And what this slide that I've got up here now is from a video that he used to explain to people who wanted to apply for the funding what they would be funding. So possible research areas include, for example, stratospheric aerosol injection, where we called brightening, cloud thinning, cloud cover control, space-based reflectors, ice thickening manipulation, and other, whatever that is. So that's the £56 million project in a very quick summary. But what I want to go further into is not just looking up, but also we need to be looking down into the water. And I want to talk about what is not being covered, which is what they're doing to our seas. One project that's been circulating recently, I've seen a bit on mainstream news, here's from the BBC, is about sucking carbon out of the sea. This project is called SeaCure, Seawater Carbon Unlocking and Renewal. This is funded by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. It will not be funded through the sale of carbon or carbon removal credits, apparently. The partners are Brunel University London, a company that works with water companies throughout the UK and Ireland. And what do we know about water around the country? Called Ilico Hydrock, University of Exeter, and Plymouth Marine Laboratory. Professor Tom Bell is of Plymouth Marine Laboratory, right down the street near you, Brian and Ben. He said that SeaCure is a project investigating an ocean carbon dioxide removal technique that involves using the natural processes of the ocean like a sponge, wringing out the sponge to remove the carbon to be stored geologically, and then releasing that low carbon water back into the ocean, where it sits and absorbs the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and thus releasing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. And now I want to go into seaweed, because seaweed apparently is becoming a very important material. Back in 2019, this Plymouth Marine Laboratory published an article called Seaweed Potential in the Southwest, which said seaweed is an underutilized and undercultivated commodity, but offers huge potential variety of products. And let's hear what Prince William had to say about seaweed back in December. The title of the full video, which we won't see the whole thing of, is Prince William and Hannah Waddingham Play Darts. This was from December 2024.
The most important question, sir, that I need to ask you is, what on earth is your obsession with seaweed all about? Why have you got a fixation on seaweed?
Through Earthshot, I've suddenly realised how important seaweed is. It sequesters carbon. So when I say sequestered, it draws down carbon.
Thank you.
It cleans the oceans, so it has a natural cleansing process. It takes pollutants and toxics out of the water, and you can make things from it. And in 2022, one of our finalists, Nopla, which stands for not plastic.
I remember Nopla.
And they created effectively plastic everything, but through seaweed.
From seaweed.
So Prince William, our future king, is very excited about seaweed. Another project that is going on related to seaweed is just also from Plymouth Marine Laboratory, has just become fully operational. Young seaweed has been planted near a wind farm in the Netherlands. So let's hear from the professor who is in charge of this particular project. Her name is Anya Quiñeros.
So this is a particularly exciting project. So what we're doing is we're looking at a potentially large-scale activity of seaweed farming offshore. And what we're trying to do is try to understand the potential to grow that seaweed offshore using wind farms as the infrastructure supporting them, and try to understand what is the capacity of that business and what are the carbon fluxes associated with it and the potential biodiversity value. Seaweed in particular have received a lot of attention in the last decade because they have very high rates of CO2 absorption. So they are one of the main sinks of CO2 in the ocean in terms of rates per gram of biomass. However, the challenge with seaweed is that the seaweed in themselves don't sequester carbon, so they don't hold the carbon for a very long period. And so the challenge here is to try and understand what happens to seaweed carbon in the long term. PML are the lead scientific institution in the project, and what we bring is the expertise that we've been developing in recent years in the ability to follow carbon and seaweed detritus from farms and natural seaweed habitats to the seafloor where it might be sequestered. The main interest for PML is really to understand whether we can support the growth of the industry in a way that is sustainable. So we're talking about managing the marine environment and adding potentially quite large-scale activities. Our interest is in understanding the carbon value of these farmed habitats, their impacts on the global carbon cycle, and also their impacts on local biodiversity. There is the suggestion that these seaweed farms could have positive effects on local biodiversity, so we'll be measuring that. And in future, what we hope is to be able to inform policy that might allow us to grow the sector in a way that is good for business, but also good for the ocean.
So I don't really know what all of that meant. I'm not sure she did either. So I got in touch with Alex Thompson because he lives in the Netherlands, of course, and I wanted to know what he knew about this wind farm and the seaweed farm, if anything. And so he sent me a voice message in reply. So let's listen to what he said, please.
I had heard vaguely that there was talk of massive offshore wind farms in that sector. Not sure how Amazon got so dominant. I do know that the Belgian sector of the shallow North Sea coast, so just south of where these are going up, in the southern Dutch sector, the Belgian sector in some parts is a chemical soup and increasingly toxic because a lot of First World War munitions were dumped on the continental shelf there, and after 100+ years the cases are starting to rot and all kinds of goop is leaking out in a massively busy shipping lane. And it's not that much less severe in this southern Netherlands stretch. There's quite a lot of shipping going past, and it's extremely shallow.
So really not good news about the chemical information there that he shared. The reason he mentioned Amazon, I should have said before, is that Amazon is actually funding this project with the seaweed farm for whatever reason. They have a climate change fund that they decide what they're going to fund on that. So moving on from there, I just, again, want to encourage people to look at official good sources and not get panicked, not get emotional. The Met Office does have a position on geoengineering research on their webpage. They do say that their contribution will be based on, that was my emphasis, simulations using climate models. We do not advocate or provide context for real-world physical experiments. So maybe just have some questions there about what their contribution is, not they say what it is based on, but what is the contribution? Just this morning, I was watching Wake Up with Sonia Poulton, and she had a guest on who mentioned this particular report, Dan Stevens. This is from the House of Commons, the regulation of geoengineering. This was printed in March 2010. I haven't read about it because I just heard about it, but I would take a look at that as well. It's 116 pages long, so that will give you something to look at for sure. And there is a petition that has been circulating. It took a while to take some traction, but I think because of all the mainstream coverage, it's really gone out there. Last time I looked this morning, it had around 85,000 signatures. And so we want to at least get it to 100,000. But at the same time, will they do anything? Probably not, because this all ties in with them meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement. So whether or not it will make a difference, we don't know, but we have to try. And just finally, I'd like to end on this meme I saw over the weekend. You see all of them laughing at us. First, we'll force them to rely on solar farms for electricity. Then we'll block out the sun. Great.
We have to laugh, Diane, but overall it is unbelievably serious to see what these people think they can do, which is control the world, control space even. We have to stay on top of it. We have to keep reporting what the real facts and information around this is. And of course, people have to become active. So once again, I'm going to say Cathy was with us today, one of those people who's out and about doing things. If you're trying to counter what's happening and you've got a specialist area, by all means, stay in that, do your best, encourage other people to join you, but don't point a finger at people who've got other priorities. This is a battle that needs to be shared. And if we work together as one big team in nation states and across the world, we can do something to stop this appalling agenda. Let's end there. Thank you all very much for joining me today. We will have an extra in a few minutes for UK column members. We will see you then. Otherwise, UK column will be back at the same time on Wednesday. Bye-bye.